Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's The World This Week. We're in the company of Aaron Zaleski from our partners, The Daily Beast. Welcome back as well to freelance reporter Aida Alami, Dov Alfon from the daily Israeli newspaper Haaretz, and Inti Landaro from the Wall Street Journal. We were talking about Fillon hanging on here in France, the once front runner, even though he's now fallen to third place in the polls. On Wednesday, he'd abruptly canceled this trip to the Paris Ag Fair. And it's obvious that the news is big when you postpone a visit to the Ag Fair, when you're a French presidential candidate. Later, after saying he was still staying in the race, it was, I guess you could call it from the sound of that, a mixed bag when he finally did go in the afternoon to the Ag Fair. So, Inti Landaro, you can postpone a trip to the Ag Fair if you're running for president, but you can't cancel one, that's for sure.
Well, he actually went, so
Yeah.
he did postpone it, yeah.
First of all, before we get back to Fillon, what are your thoughts? This French, I guess you could call it an obsession with the Ag Fair.
Well, I think France used to be a very agricultural country. It is still a big agriculture producer, a grain producer, milk producer, but now the share of the population involved in agriculture is way smaller than it was. But it's still, I think it's still very important because of the provinces and the weight of farmers in the parliament.
It's a week that kind of shows up that dichotomy, doesn't it, between Paris and the rest of the country.
And it's always so dramatic. There are always things happening during this fair, it seems.
Yeah, the Ag Fair, of course, where we saw stories, more and more farmers, Aaron Zaleski, have pivoted away from the Conservatives. That was their natural party that they would vote for, towards the far-right leader, Marine Le Pen.
Absolutely. I mean, well, the farming sector in France has been in, stagnating, I would even say an economic crisis, in recent years. And a lot of them are angry, they're disillusioned, they're blaming international competition, they're blaming the EU and EU regulations, rather. And a lot of them feel that they see Le Pen as sort of a beacon of hope because of her anti-EU stance. And they feel like it's going to return to the good old days again, a far-right leader.
All right, and of course, Marine Le Pen, this is the interesting bit. By the way, with the French news agency AFP now reporting that she too is to face investigating magistrates over a separate parliamentary payroll scandal, this one at the European level. And yet the mud doesn't seem to stick to her.
No, because she's anti-system, right? She's saying they are all against me. Vote for me because I represent your interest. I understand France. I understand the cause, but I understand everything, and they don't understand. European Union does not understand, Parliament does not understand. So it won't stick, really, because it will stick to Fillon because he says, I'm the Frenchman, and I'm honest, and I'm the General de Gaulle, etc. But to her, I think this investigation will account to nothing.
So right now in the polls, the latest ones, and they change every day,
Yeah.
so they, perhaps every hour, but the latest ones have her neck and neck with the centrist who's running as an independent, Emmanuel Macron, the former economy minister.
Yes.
Fillon relegated to third place.
Right.
There are polls now out that suggest that if Juppé ran, suddenly it would be completely different.
Yeah, she will be out. She won't climb to the second round. This is big news, and this is an immense pressure on Fillon to drop from the race. And I think this is why her interference with the presidential race is much more than simply be the far-right candidate. She will actively, she decides what people will vote, because a lot of people want to vote against her.
Of course, as we've seen, polls often get things wrong these days.
And I don't make predictions anymore. I've quit the prediction business.
Inti Landaro, your thoughts on where this could all go? Because remember, we still have some big...
I always tell people to be pretty cautious, because what everybody's been saying during the past 3 years is that Marine Le Pen will make it to the runoff and will lose in the second round. I think the first part of the equation will probably come right, and then it's. I mean, we all know polls and everything, but I think there is a lot of possibility for her to make it to the second round. But the result of that second round will be much tighter than what people expect.
All right, another high-stakes campaign, this one in Turkey, where voters decide April 16th whether to grant executive powers to the president. With 3 million Turkish nationals living in Germany, Germany is actually high-stakes stuff. Cabinet members were set to travel, but after the February 14th arrest of the correspondent for German daily Die Welt, Dennis Yücel, on terror charges, there's been outrage in Germany, and at least 3 cities have barred rallies where Turkish government ministers were scheduled to attend. Ankara has responded in kind.
If you want to maintain your relations with us, you need to learn how to behave. You cannot tackle these matters with these methods. It can't go on this way. We will retaliate without hesitation. And then you can think about the rest. This is our message to Germany.
Germany has to learn how to behave, Dov Alfon.
Well, it seems like Erdogan is speaking, but frankly, I hear Netanyahu, Berlusconi, all those populists coming up, and we're a bit tired of that, but it's apparently working in local elections. And so everything is really boiling over, and a lot of words are said that have absolutely no meaning. It's like Donald Trump tweeting suddenly things that have absolutely no
does his madness have a reason? There are a lot of people in Germany who support Erdogan.
Yes, a lot of
those Turkish nationals.
He has method in his madness, that's for sure, and he knows what he's doing. But it's really for the local, and it's very dangerous to play with these cards. And it is getting more and more frightening to see a lot of politicians worldwide getting the populist card out.
Yeah, the Turkish president, who's now accusing Germany of aiding and harboring terror. And he's accusing that journalist of espionage.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening in Turkey is really worrisome with this jailed German journalist. They keep on violating human rights and going against press freedom. And I think Angela Merkel is in a complicated situation now because at the same time there's the refugee crisis that they need to cooperate with Turkey on, and then there's all the human rights violations that Germany cannot, just pretend are not happening.
All right. Another story we're following on another continent, a crucial step on the road to peace in Colombia. As part of last November's historic deal with FARC rebels, the start of disarmament in remote jungle areas, 7,000 Marxist guerrillas scheduled to be canned into transit zones. After decades of war, the disarmament has indeed begun this week. But already there are delays and a fair dose of suspicion.
We don't see the proper conditions yet. We'll have to wait. It's not that we're opposed to laying down our arms. We'll do it. But we'll do it when we see the other side engaging as well.
When we lived in the jungle, conditions were better. We had the trees over our heads. Here it's like we're in a refugee camp.
Like we're in a refugee camp. Inti Landau, how do you think things are going? You're the former correspondent in Bogota for the Wall Street Journal.
I think we all knew it would be complicated, and I think it's not yet to be written off. I think things are going as expected. It will be complicated. It will take time. It will be questioned, but it doesn't mean it's not working.
It doesn't mean it's not working, but we're seeing that the rhetoric is pretty fiery.
Well, it was. You remember the referendum? So everybody knew the agreement would be questioned, but a lot of people when we'd start to implement. And we also knew, even though nobody really discussed that, but that the guerrillas on the ground would probably not be as enthusiastic as
the leaders were who negotiated in Havana.
Or as the government made it look like to win that referendum or to lose it.
Or to lose it and then have the second one.
I was just going to agree that, I think a certain amount of complexity is to be expected. This is really a watershed moment in the history of the country. This has been going on since 1964, and it's sort of to me, it represents an end of an era, to a chapter in the Marxist armed struggle. Who were these people were often inspired by Castro, and it's a bit, I see a bit of an irony that the same year that Castro died, the FARC are finally laying their weapons down.
I spoke to someone who was part of the peace process agreement who told me that one of the things they're truly worried about is Colombia is one of the countries that gets the most aid from the United States and gets a lot of aid from the EU. And they're really worried about what a Trump administration would do to that, because he said this money they're getting is very crucial to make it happen and to make it work well and to make, the country go into a good direction.
Yeah, we haven't heard much from the U.S. State Department right now. They're still in the process of appointing people. A lot of money has been tied to the crackdown on drug trafficking. And so the worry is the Trump administration still is going to support financially this peace deal?
Well, the Obama administration was supporting. So I don't remember. I don't remember having heard any senior Trump administration official discussing Colombia or the peace deal in Colombia. Maybe I'm
That's
wrong.
because Fox and Friends probably doesn't talk about it.
Right? No, but it's.
No, I don't
think they have set us. Well, meanwhile, the money was earmarked and the support keeps rolling on. So I wouldn't expect it to be yet a problem.
One more question on this, and this is alarming. Activists, human rights activists, who've been killed in the countryside, and the numbers of those are increasing. Who's killing them and why?
Colombia is a difficult country, and you always had what they called right-wing paramilitaries, which are right-wing, violent groups funded by big landlords who have been cracking down on small farmers, on agriculture workers in the fields, and the increase, the rhetoric about against the peace process and against the guerrilla has kind of let these people lose and become more aggressive. And I think that one of the most serious problems for Colombia is what will happen to all these people from the guerrillas who are handing over the guns. They will probably won't find a decent job quickly. The majority of them are used to extreme violence. Will they go to join other violent groups, more criminal groups? There is still a demand for cocaine around the world, so there is still an incentive to produce drugs. It's still banned, so drug traffickers will need hitmen. The situation is difficult in Colombia. It's not been solved because the peace agreement was signed.
Before there was a Michel Platini or a Zinedine Zidane, France had a player by the name of Raymond Kopa. Real Madrid paying tribute this Friday at training to the French footballer who passed away at the age of 85. Kopa, who brought 3 titles to the Spanish capital in the 1950s. These were the days when players didn't go abroad. The son of Polish coal miners who himself went down in the pits at the age of 14. He'd go on to revolutionize the game with the creation of the post of attacking midfielder. At 1.68 meters, he became known as the Napoleon of football. Dov Alfon, when you look at these pictures from a bygone era, a time when here in this country, football was the 3rd most popular sport after cycling and boxing.
Right.
And here was this guy who I guess it's a story of globalization then. The first
he was the first one, yeah. He was the first one going global, and also it's an extraordinary story, really, because he took care of his own destiny. He was in the pit, he was a son of coal miners, a son of immigrants, and he told a French newspaper, La Voix du Nord, in one of his last interviews, that I had, in fact, only 3 choices. Either I continue to be in the coal mine and I'll die very young, or I'll go and try boxing, or I'll go to football. and he chose football, and he was extraordinarily successful in it. And it's a very encouraging story. It's a global story. It's a story, of course, of going to the world and taking your chance with you. But it's also, I think, a really uplifting and inspiring story.
And an inspiring story that has a political twist to it, Aida Alami, because like Michel Platini, the son of Italian immigrants, and Zinedine Zidane, the son of Algerian immigrants, here's this son of Polish immigrants. And at a time when, of course, in this country, with the context of the identity politics on the campaign trail, Raymond Kopa's story is a reminder of what France is about.
Absolutely. It's a nice inspiration for many people, I'm sure.
When you look at those images from the 1950s, what's your reaction, Intilandaro?
I would say what I feel is it's a truly inspiring story. It's true, but again, it's the same story of most of those football champions. If you think about Pelé, who was also a kid from the streets, or Maradona, or even Zidane, or now Benzema, those are kids who were raised in poor conditions and who have only that option to rise and to be successful in life is to play football.
Aaron Zaleski, it's a period before television for the most part. Very few games were televised. And that's before he becomes a star. And then after his career, TV's around. He does television endorsements as well. He was modern in more ways than one. His story is a story of how football's changed, but also how France has changed.
Yes, I would agree with that. Again, I'm not a huge. I don't follow football too much, the current or in the past. But yes, I think that you make a good point. I mean, just there's the political aspect, and the fact that the world has become. It is a bit of a story about globalization. But the world has become increasingly globalized, and football itself has become increasingly globalized, and communications over the course of his lifetime.
And when he goes abroad to Real Madrid, people in here, he's playing at the time for Reims, called him a traitor.
Yes, because he was the first really to go abroad, and Frenchmen couldn't understand why would you go outside of France if you can live in France? It sounds absurd to them. And so very quickly they said, okay, he's Polish. He's not really French. And he's a traitor to France. But of course, when it took 3 times the League of Champions and suddenly the tone changed and suddenly it was so respectable. And suddenly children at schools were told, you could really succeed like Kopa.
Could really succeed like Kopa, and also taking France to 3rd place at the 58 World Cup didn't hurt either. I want to thank Tov Alfon. I want to thank Aaron Zaleski, Intilandaro, Aida Alami. Stay with us. Media Watch is next. And we say hello to Diptyque Laurent. We begin with a story out of Poland.
That's right. Well, actually out of Poland and Brussels. It concerns a Polish lawmaker at the European Parliament. His name is Janusz Korwin-Mikke. He's 74 years old. And during a debate, out of all things, on Wednesday, about gender pay gap, he made the following comments about women, which we'll listen to in a second, and it provoked a pretty nice smackdown from a Spanish MP who was also present. This video has been viewed over 2 million times on Facebook. Let's take a listen.
And of course, women must earn less than men because they are weaker, they are smaller, they are less intelligent, and they must earn less. That's all.
Gracias, Pérez.
Mire, señor diputado, según usted, según sus teorías, yo no tendría derecho de estar aquí como diputada. Y sé que le duele y le preocupa que hoy las mujeres podamos estar representando a los ciudadanos en igualdad de condiciones con usted. Yo aquí vengo a defender a las mujeres europeas de hombres como usted.
So, just to give you a bit of background, because this, I guess, needs a bit of context. Korwin-Mikke is the head of his own far-right party in Poland called the Korwin Party. He was actually kicked out of a fringe group for having a child out of wedlock, apparently. He's also made disparaging comments about people of color and is a man that Nigel Farage has said makes him look moderate. So I think that's saying a lot. This row couldn't be better timed. It comes just before International Women's Day. And the MP, for his part, is showing no signs of backing down. If you look at this tweet from his account, he says, yes, it is the 21st century. It's time to get rid of the 20th century stereotypes that women are equal to men. So he's just gone and inflamed this debate even more. Obviously, I just want to show you a few reactions on Twitter. This user, a lot of love, of course, for that Spanish MP, Iratxe Garcia Perez. This user says, you're my hero for standing up to this sexism. This user says it's a return to the Stone Age, but he also says, nicely shut down. Another user saying it's amazing that the Polish MP managed to find 2 women to marry him, and notes that he has 3 daughters. So it really does say a lot about what kind of role model he is, I guess. But because there is some justice in the world, BuzzFeed reports that the European Parliament has opened an investigation.
All right, has an open investigation. And meanwhile, we were mentioning it earlier, the fur is flying between Berlin and Ankara over the barring of government ministers to come campaign. This after the jailing of a German journalist in Turkey. That's right. That journalist, Deniz Yücel, was arrested by authorities in Turkey. And as you said, it is provoking this sort of diplomatic row between Turkey and Germany. Now, Erdogan did want to travel to Germany to rally ahead of that constitutional referendum. Now, before that, a controversial biopic called Reis has actually come out in cinemas. Reis roughly translates to The Chief. It's a biopic about Erdogan's early childhood. Let's take a look at that trailer, a little bit of that trailer, which I'm afraid isn't Turkish. You'll have to bear with me, but you'll get an idea of what kind of trailer, what kind of film it's about.
Minareler süngü, kubbeler miğfer, camiler kışlanır, müminler asker.
So that film was actually meant to be released on February the 26th, which is Erdogan's birthday. But films typically come out on Fridays in Turkey, which is the reason it came out this Friday. Now, the film, interestingly, was actually shot in Cyprus and not in Turkey, which is strange for a biopic about the Turkish president. Now, Die Welt, a German paper, says, it is above all an explanation and justification of the patriarchy from where Erdogan comes and to where he's obviously going back. A lot of people do see it as this kind of propagandist film. In any case, it's not going to be getting any awards anytime soon, even accidental Oscars, I guess. IMDb has ranked it the 3rd worst movie on record. Bearing in mind, it only came out this Friday, so it came well behind B-grade films with titles like Super Babies 2 and Santa Claus Conquers the Martians.
Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, getting better ratings than the biopic about Erdogan. There was a movie about Sepp Blatter, which I think was paid for by FIFA, starring
Gérard Depardieu.
And Gérard Depardieu, starring Tim Roth. So I guess vanity movies don't go over very well.
Not really.
All right.
Not really.
In any case, Diptyque Laurent, many thanks for that. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in The World This Week.